Yeah, it's not every day you see the shining results of the labor.
It's just that faithfulness over and over.
And those translators are faithful to keep going back and keep working, and they encounter lots of hardships. I'm keenly aware of the time of their travel that they spend with me in the airplane is the easiest part of their travel. As soon as I drop them off, it gets harder.
It's a good reminder that the airstrip oftentimes isn't the end of their journey. Mm-hmm. They land, you take off, and then they have to hike several hours or go down the mountain or get on a boat. Well, good morning, Jason.
Good morning.
Welcome to Uncharted.
Thank you.
Yeah, just let's open up with just some of the ideas, some of the ways that you've seen God open doors to get you to this point in your ministry. And so tell the listeners what it is you do.
Well, my job for the last 14, 15 years has been missionary pilot. It started way back when I was in university in the late 90s. So I'm almost 46. I'm not young anymore. I think
just
I'm
getting
young,
warmed up.
but I'm not young anymore. And I've always wanted to be a pilot. That was my goal. My dad was a pilot, and I'd been around it, just loved it, and went to school to learn to fly airplanes and knew nothing of mission aviation at that time. But through a missions emphasis week at the school I went to, Laterno University, put a plug in for them.
Yeah, good school.
I learned of mission pilots, and God really impressed on me that, hey, if you want to fly, this is what I want you to do with that. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's
and you
when
knew that was a thing?
I didn't know it was a thing until then.
Yeah.
That was the first time I'd heard of missionary pilots. I thought missionaries were pastors.
Right.
That's all I grew up seeing in my home church.
Right.
And so I ended up changing my major from engineering, which I didn't like anyway. So it was great, to A&P maintenance, aircraft maintenance, because they said, oh, pilots need to be mechanics too. And I thought, oh, that sounds fun. So from that day on, loved going to school because it was just all airplanes all the time. And that just suited me just fine.
Yeah, and it had a reason for the study. It wasn't just random.
And my wife was interested in missions. Well, my wife-to-be, when I met her at school, and we thought we would leave school and go straight into missions. Like that's what we were doing. Well, as God would have it, plans. He had other plans, and we spent a dozen years working. I spent a dozen years working in industry. Our family grew from just the two of us to 5 of us with 3 children. And then shortly after our third was born, about 6 weeks after, actually, God spoke to both my wife and I separately. We were in different states because I was flying for a regional airline at the time. And she was at home at our church's missions conference. And we got on the phone that evening and we're like, we're supposed to go do missions now. We're like, both of us, just separately. And it was kind of one of those God things like, oh, okay, we should take this seriously.
And that's a very unique story because we hear a lot of stories of folks coming out of, even if they have a call for mission aviation, they graduate with a lot of debt, a lot of school debt. Mm-hmm. They get into industry and never get off that train. They stay, they buy a house, they get settled, and 10, 12 years later, they've forgotten the original call to go into mission aviation because life happens.
I'd been at the regional airline for 4.5 years. I didn't have enough seniority to be a captain. I was still an first officer, but I was working weeks. I had weekends off, 3-day weekend every week.
Wow.
Why would you? Not making a ton of money, but the schedule was good. I was home 4 days a week. Working 4 days a week, home 3 days a week. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
We were pretty, quote unquote, comfortable, as we don't like to use that word in mission aviation, but
right.
But when God said go, we had the choice. Do I tell God no?
And sometimes just our busyness says no.
Yeah.
Because we don't hear that call because we're too busy. You were available.
And I was blessed that I didn't have school debt. That's all my parents and God doing that, and I didn't have that burden. So
that is one of the biggest hurdles right now that we're seeing is the school debt for young aviators to take that leap of faith into missions. Mm-hmm. You have a desire. Most pilots have a desire to serve and complete a task, and I think you're no different.
No,
but during your time as a mission pilot, there have been times where you weren't able to serve.
Yeah, so I think that mission mindset is one of our greatest strengths as mission aviators and also one of our greatest weaknesses because in any job interview, they'll ask you how your strength is your weakness, those classic HR questions, and it's true.
Right, the shadow.
Yeah, so yes, it's a strength of ours because we want to get the job done and we're very focused on that, but it can also be a danger to us because we're too focused on the job and we're not seeing the environment around us telling us today's not the day, or don't go there now because it's not the right aeronautical decision. It's not safe. So one that stands out to me is that in the mission world, at least in PNG and Ukarumpa, where I served all my mission time on the field, we pretty much know everybody that lives in the community. You may not be friends with all of them, but you know them, especially the ones that go to and from the bush locations. You get to know them. But one particular story is our neighbors in Ukarumpa work for another mission. They weren't SIL or Wycliffe. They were another mission, but became really good friends of ours living next door to them. And they work in a very remote part of Papua New Guinea. And for years, they'd been going to and from the village from an airstrip that was about 2.5 hours downriver from theirs. And they were working to build an airstrip right at their village. But at this point in time, their airstrip wasn't yet open. And I was tasked to go pick them up because they'd been in the village for a couple of months and they were trying to get out and get a break and resupply. And so I went down and tried to get to their village, the airstrip they were at, which is not their village. And it was one of those just rainy.
So they had a hike to a neighboring village with an airstrip because their airstrip wasn't built yet in the remote
It was
setting.
a 2.5 hour boat ride in a small outboard motor boat. So they had done that trip and they were just waiting for the airplane.
So they left their village house and are now at a strange environment.
Right, a place that's not either of their homes. It's not their Ukarumpa home and it's not their village home. So
and there's no Airbnb there, I guess.
There is not. I can assure you. And so I tried really hard to get to that airstrip in the first part of the day and just couldn't. There was just too much rain. The visibility just wasn't there. I could get within 3 or 4 miles, 5 miles of it, low altitude, but just couldn't get any further. And the ironic thing was I could fly over their village house and see the airstrip that was almost finished. And had that airstrip been open, I could have landed. It was not good weather, but I could have got there. So that was even like, man, I wish the airstrip was open.
So you were actually in the plane trying to get in.
Yeah, it was just, I was by myself in the plane because it was the last thing of the day.
You weren't back at the office looking at weather on a radar. No. You were actually over their area, but unable to land.
Right. So then I had to go back south to another airstrip that's much larger and has fuel. So I went back there and got some more fuel from drums. So that took a little bit of time to drum fuel the airplane.
From drums?
Yes.
Literally sitting in 50-gallon drums.
That's right. We fuel a lot from steel drums.
So the pilot, are having to pump fuel out of a drum.
Yes. Thankfully, we graduated to electric fuel pumps powered by the aircraft batteries, which is a real treat if you've ever hand cranked 200 liters or 400 liters of fuel into your airplane.
You're thankful for that little electric pump.
Yes, that electric pump is wonderful, but it just takes time to set it up and fill one wing and then move it all over to the other side and fill the other wing. But I had time because I was waiting on weather that day anyway. And these missionary friends of mine I was trying to pick up, they had a satellite texting service. So quite a bit of delay, but I could text them and say, how's the weather now? And several minutes later, I'd get a response because I had mobile signal at the airstrip where I was fueling. So I was trying to give them every chance that I could to get them that day because I knew they weren't at a place with an Airbnb.
Yeah, that's right.
So I tried again, lots of turning, low altitude, trying to find a way through the rain and just didn't, and I had to leave them.
And this is a mountainous part of...
This is a flat part of PNG, actually. It's just south of the mountains in Gulf Province is where it is, if anybody's familiar with PNG. But no, there's one mountain that I had to worry about, but everything else is pretty flat. So that made it easier to work the low-level bad weather for a little bit. But it just didn't work, and I had to leave them behind. And I didn't know where they were going to sleep that night, and they have two kids with them, and I just felt really bad. You know, I wanted to serve and wanted to get them home. But the right decision that day was to not to.
We say often that we love to fly today, but we love to fly tomorrow better. Mm-hmm. And we're not a one-and-done organization. We also say that the hardest maneuver a pilot ever has to make is a 180, giving it up.
It is.
Going back home. But you knew, something in you knew how difficult it was going to be for that family. Did you ever spend an overnight in a village like that or in a remote community? Or have you heard stories? Like, how did you know what it meant to leave them behind?
Yeah, I've done my share of village overnights at Bible dedications or just overnights that needed to happen operationally speaking. And most of the time, the culture in PNG is very hospitality focused, and they'll take care of you. But it's still usually very meager accommodations. Let's use that word.
Yeah.
nothing comfortable, but keep the rain off of you and have a place to lay down. So I figured they'd find something.
Probably stay dry, but that's about it.
Yeah, if they'd actually been in their village, I would have felt less bad about it because that's their area and people know them and they have a house. But because they were at an auxiliary site just to get picked up by the airplane, I knew it would be a little bit harder for them.
And when you said earlier that they're your neighbors when they're out in civilization, so to speak, they're literally the next house.
Yep, they're literally right next door.
So you have to see them the next morning or whenever they do come out, and your wife has to talk to them. And
oh yeah, and they're great people. I mean, they totally understood at the end of it when another pilot went the next day and picked them up, and the weather was good enough, just long enough for that plane to get in and get out, and it went bad. It went bad again.
So what part of your training, what part of your DNA, what has been instilled in you not to push the weather and try to be the rescuer, the savior? What made you fly over and give it up? Because that's so difficult for you as a pilot, as a mission pilot. You're service-oriented, but you gave it up that day. Why?
Well, I go back to it's the JAARS aviation safety culture that gets instilled in us from the first day of orientation. And we talk about it, and it's true that 100, 200, 300 turnbacks is better than one accident. I mean, it's just
a few dollars in extra fuel burn.
Yeah, yes, some people get inconvenienced, but having an accident is infinitely worse than hundreds of turnbacks. And like I said, that gets instilled to us here at JAARS when we're first learning how to do this job, and that's as much of learning how to do the job as the actual stick and rudder of flying an airplane into a tiny little airstrip in the middle of nowhere.
Because you came to JAARS with an awesome education at LeTourneau, and then years of flying, quite a few years flying for a regional airline. So you knew how to fly, but yet you still had to come to JAARS and do a technical evaluation and a pre-field orientation, a 4 or 5 month course prior to going into P&G. And that's where you learned, or this was solidified or reinforced, because you probably had some of that from your previous training.
Yeah, it's a different way of flying because the airline world is 2 crew, lots of support. You have dispatchers checking the flight plan and the weather and managing how much fuel you need, and flight attendants dealing with the passengers and rampers loading the bags, and you just kind of walk on, check the flight plan and go, yep, looks good to me, and
get the clipboard and
sit down in the seat and get the plane ready to push back, and you're off. Like, you just fly the airplane. But as a mission pilot, you're doing all of it. Like, we had people that would build the flights for the day. You're going here, 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 and picking up these people, this stuff. But as far as planning the flight, how much fuel do we need? How much weight can I actually put in the airplane on every leg? What's the weather? And loading people, fueling, like, it's all the pilot's job. So it's very different from the airline world. My airline experience helped me, but I had to learn a different way to fly. And I learned that here at JAARS. Yeah,
and it is a cool story that if an airline pilot is listening today, or a regional pilot, you're like, yeah, you too can do this.
Absolutely, because I did it. If I can do it, so can you.
That's right. We're both testimony to that, as you were talking, it reminded me of a story where for 4 days I went out to the airport, but the cloud cover was too low to take off. And we had got an emergency call that a young newborn got pneumonia out in the village. And I stayed all day, didn't clear the next day. So finally it's Sunday morning. I'm out there, and the tower gave us special VFR to take off. And I was about a half an hour out, and I got the call on HF radio that the baby had passed away Saturday night.
Yeah.
And it just felt like the very reason I was there, I didn't accomplish. I wasn't able to. And it's really hard when that kind of thing happens, because we are built to serve. And then when you can't, and then you have to process that. It can be a real challenge and a discouragement to pilots and mechanics who are out there wanting to serve. But being able to make that hard call and say, nope, I'm doing the 180, I'm going home, I'll do it again tomorrow. Because like you said, one accident today, it's hard to keep it under $1 million of impact.
Oh yeah, that's just the financial impact.
just
Never mind the
loss of
personal
life or
impact,
limb.
and
Yeah.
just it could be.
In 2025, with all the modern technology and, you know, the internet, and you can digitize the gospel. Why airplanes? Why that investment?
I like to say Papua New Guinea is about at least 10 years behind the rest of the world when it comes to technology and infrastructure, and it seems to be about right.
Yeah.
You know, what we have here in the USA today, they'll have about 10 years from now.
And that's in their modern city or in.
Yeah, the cities are a little bit different, especially Port Moresby, which is kind of its own little unique.
That's the capital.
That's the capital. It's kind of it's an island unto itself as far as amenities and technology, and then the rest of the country is a bit.
And it's
less
actually
so.
an island right from where you live. You can't get from the capital to where you live.
There is no road, no, because our base is in about the middle of the country, up in the highlands in the mountains, about a mile above sea level, and there is no way to drive from the capital to where we live and work. So you either have to take a boat all the way around the southeast end of the island to Leh, and then drive 3 to 3.5 hours up, or you've got to take an airplane. There's no other way.
And this is 2025.
That's right. There's places on the north coast where you go from sea level to 13,000 foot mountains in about 10 miles of lateral distance.
Wow.
So it's like how you ever build a road over that, I don't think it's possible. I'm not a road engineer, but I don't think that's something that's going to be happening even with modern tech.
Yeah.
It's just too steep and too rugged, and the soil is all clay. Again, I'm not an engineer, but I don't think that's great for roads.
Well, you
stability.
started out as an engineer, so.
Yeah, didn't like it. Too much math. Be a pilot, there's less math.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the mountains in Papua New Guinea are still growing, that they're very.
I've heard that too. Like
That the top of the ridge
Yep.
is still almost razor sharp because, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever experienced an earthquake in PNG?
Oh yeah. I mean, hundreds. I mean, all the way from some scary and some just kind of wake you up in the middle of the night and rock you back to sleep because they're just, oh, it's an earthquake, and you just roll over and go back to sleep. But yeah, lots of earthquakes. It's
Yeah.
on that, classic Pacific Ring of Fire we learn about in school in our geography textbooks. And so yeah, the tectonic plates are always shifting, and there's always some earthquake going on. I mean, I still have an earthquake app on my phone that tells me every time there's an earthquake in PNG, and it's almost daily.
And it's literally hundreds.
Yeah.
Like if you look at that app, it's just red circle after red circle overlapping. And so our podcast is Uncharted. And what we talk about here and like to talk about is there's still areas of the world that are uncharted. I mean, you flew with a map that had that white area saying relief data not
Incomplete.
incomplete, relief data incomplete.
Yep.
But you're actually in an area where there's that many earthquakes and the mountains are still growing. So it's not going to get better. It's not going to get easier to travel to that literally uncharted geographic area.
Yep. And people are isolated because of that. They may live in the middle of the mountains, but to get out and get to a town is just a Herculean undertaking. A couple of days of walking, then you got to get a boat and go hours along the coast. I mean, and I say a couple of days of walking for them. For you and I, it might not even be possible for us to make that walk because we're just not conditioned for it like they are. I mean, they grew up there. It's all they've ever known, and they can walk circles around me in the mountains without even
And this is literally a
catching their
trail
breath. Yeah,
with
just
a bush knife.
Yeah,
cutting
jungle
your-
footpath. And I mean, I've done a few walks like that, but nothing really long, thankfully. I prefer to fly over it and look down than trudge through it on my feet. But yeah, it's hard. And if they need medical care, where do they go? If they need even education, even schools, the government schools don't reach everywhere that I've flown with an airplane because it's just too remote, and the government doesn't have the resources, and there are no schools.
Yeah.
So the kids don't go to school because they just don't have access to one. And it can be 20-minute flight from a major city, and it's just you land and it's another world, and you can just tell this place is isolated. These people do not get out much.
So you said that typically speaking, PNG as a country is 10 years behind, but some of the people, some of the communities you're able to access with the aircraft are 150, 200 years behind with technology.
Yeah, I think in some cases that's true. And the airplane really connects them. That's why air service is so important. It gets students to and from school in towns. It brings healthcare. It brings supplies that they can't, if they can't grow it in the village, it has to come in on an airplane or they don't have it, you know. Even the simple things like salt, you know, they can't get salt unless it comes in on an airplane or they hike it in their bag for 2 days.
Right. And then you also fly their commercial products out to town for revenue, like coffee.
Yeah, we fly coffee out and then going back in. That's we call it store goods, you know, 2-minute noodles, salt, tinned fish, you know, crackers.
Part of our Uncharted theme is more than just geography. It's a heart without Christ. So somebody that doesn't have God's word, the roadmap of life, in their language or in a way they can connect and relate to it, but make the connection to flying coffee beans and store goods to delivering the gospel.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that is the way of building relationships and meeting people's needs that makes them open to the gospel. Again, you've heard that cliche, you know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. There was a translation program coming to a close, meaning they were about ready to dedicate the New Testament, which is usually it's a big celebration.
Right.
But the community, at least initially, was not interested. And we flew the translator in one day, me and another pilot who was checking me into this airstrip. And that's the first time I'd been there. And he was going in to see if the community even wanted a dedication. And he was pretty depressed, kind of down because they'd worked their whole lives.
Years.
20 years or more to get this.
Wow.
And the community's just like, we don't care. And so that was a reality. And I can't remember the timing. It must have been after that because that was my checkout. So sometime between then and the actual dedication, I got a mission to go pick up a casket, and fly that body from town back into the village because people in Papua New Guinea generally want to be buried in their village. Like, they may go to town, live there their whole life, but die. They want to go back home and be buried at home. And I was to fly this body into that airstrip where the dedication, where the dedication was hoping to be.
Happen.
And it was a logistical challenge, as I recall, just getting it all worked out. It was a really long day, delays. It was in the afternoon. This is a mountain airstrip next to the tallest mountain in the country. So not the easiest place to get in the afternoon with winds and cloud and
restrictions, right?
But I went in, got in. There was enough. The weather was good enough. I was able to get in and land and drop the body off. And later I found out from the missionary who was going to do the dedication that had a huge impact on the community, that we cared enough to serve them. And this was apparently a fairly important person in the village who had died. And that act of us serving them in that practical way really helped the relationship. And I'm not going to say it made the dedication possible, but it helped strengthen that relationship between the translation team and the village and the people.
These people actually
ease
care
that process
to bring a dead body back, because there's no return on that investment.
Right. But those kind of things, it helped. It helped the relationship. And in Papua New Guinea, it's a relationship culture, and relationship is everything.
Yeah.
And if you have a good relationship, everything else will be fine.
Right.
And if you have a bad relationship, nothing will be fine.
Nothing works. But that really is a testimony of how we see Christ in the New Testament, where it's about the one. He'll leave the 99 for the one. And you did a whole flight for one.
Mm-hmm.
And that was somehow part of the story of, yes, we actually do accept the gospel because we see it lived out. You said that the dedication, this translation couple was working for 20 years, give or take. And that seems to be a good number. But that's 20 years before the New Testament arrives, the whole New Testament arrives. Mm-hmm. That's not even the whole Bible, but for the New Testament. That's hundreds of flights of just supporting the community, preparing the ingredients for the gospel to be realized. You fly to that village 4 or 5 times a month, maybe, or for 20 years. Is that a reasonable?
I think that's true. Yeah, if there's an active program going on with a family that's living there. I came in on this one at the tail end of their project because they'd been there a long time before I showed up.
But the other communities you're supporting for years, it's not, every day there's a New Testament dedication.
No.
There's really nothing that you can put your finger on like the Gospels reaching the hearts of these people.
Yeah, it's not every day you see the shining results of the labor.
It's just that faithfulness over and over.
And those translators are faithful to keep going back and keep working, and they encounter lots of hardships. You know, I'm keenly aware of the time of their travel that they spend with me in the airplane is the easiest part of their travel. As soon as I drop them off, it gets harder.
Right.
And especially when you're picking them up and you know what they've come through just to get to the airstrip. And so I always try to make it as comfortable for them as I can in the airplane. It's like to let them know, okay, you're with me now. I'll take care of you. You can just sit back and take a nap, and I'll get you the rest of the way. And that gives me great joy to be able to provide that kind of service for them. And they know when they hear the airplane, they see the airplane coming, they're just like, okay, now I'm going to get home today. They're going to take care of me.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that the airstrip oftentimes isn't the end of their journey. Mm-hmm. They land, you take off, and then they have to hike several hours or go down the mountain or get on a boat to navigate a river.
There were very few airstrips I can think of where the missionaries lived right next to the airstrip. That wasn't as common as I thought it was going to be. When I first went over, I thought everybody lived by their airstrip, but not in PNG anyway.
Yeah, and that's a good reminder for myself and our listeners that one of the uniquenesses of JAARS is air, land, and sea working in conjunction. Four-wheel drive, motorcycle training, maritime training, because all of them have to work together for the complete journey to take place.
Especially in a place like PNG, which is also a nation with many islands. And sea travel is necessary in lots of places to get people where they need to go. And if you don't have a boat, you're using a helicopter. And that's often not the most economical way to move around.
Right. It's definitely not cheap, but you can either expend your health, energy, safety, and security, or you can spend your money.
That's right. That's right.
So you're going to be spending one way or the other.
Yeah. So it's going to cost you something.
So you talked a little bit about just the confirmation that you and your wife and your kids, hey, it's time. Let's go. We're going to go serve overseas. But you're right now in a transition. A few months ago, you were like, okay, our time is complete in that service in PNG. We're transitioning back to the U.S., and you're looking for what's next. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we talk about what it takes for a young aviator to join missions. But talk to us a little bit about what's it feel like to leave the overseas portion. You're still in ministry. God can use you anywhere. Mm-hmm. You know,
we know all that.
we know all that.
Yeah.
But it's still a decision.
Yes.
It's still something to wrestle with.
Yeah, I believe it was the right decision for our family at this time. However, I am, like you said, keenly aware of my friends who are still there, and they're understaffed and overworked, and they're still trying to get the job done. And so that was one of the hardest things about making that decision was I know I'm leaving them shorter handed than they used to be. And that's hard. That was the hardest part. Even though knowing that, yes, this is the right thing to do for us, but knowing that is hard. And I don't think there's a day goes by I don't think about them.
And you are a team guy. You want to support the team.
Yep. So that was hard. But I also know that it's not about me. And God has a plan, and he will bring the right people to them at the right time. In fact, they're already coming. JAARS has been working very hard over the last several years to recruit, equip, train, and deploy people to PNG, and it's already happening, especially in our maintenance side, which was the most critically staffed part of our operation for a long time. So they're already showing up. There's more coming. There's pilots coming. I mean, the reason I'm here at JAARS right now is to do some Kodiak training with 2 new pilots who will be going to PNG later this year or early next year. So people are going. God is sending people, and that's encouraging for me to see. And yeah, I'm hoping that God will make it clear while we are here, if this is the place we're supposed to plug in and give back, I guess you could say, to the place
multiplication ministry where you're training the next crew.
Because my father-in-law used to say that everything is in preparation for something else. And so spending almost 13 years on the field wasn't for nothing. There must be some other way that God wants me to use that.
Amen.
And I just don't know yet how that's going to be, but it could be here. So we're looking very seriously at serving at JAARS.
Yeah. So Jason, you're currently here preparing several young aviators and a director of aviation to go and serve. So it's in real time. It's literally you just came back and you're now here at JAARS filling in for joining our training staff to help prepare some people, some pilot mechanics that are going to go and serve. What's your day look like over the next 3 weeks that you're here?
Yeah, so we're trying to get them familiar with the airplane, specifically the now JAARS Kodiak, formerly Quest Kodiak, and get them as familiar with the airplane as we can before they get to the field to try to ease the burden of the field trainers and giving them that checkout. So the more we can teach them here, the more comfortable they feel in the airplane, the better off they're going to be, and it's going to help those the instructors rather in Papua New Guinea get them through their field checkout. So an introduction to turbine operations, because I don't think either of these young guys have done any turbine operations, and I think turbines are easier to fly once you know how to do it than pistons are. There's much less to manage, but there's certain things about them that make them unique and things you need to be aware of and things you should always do and not do. And so just getting them familiar with that type of engine that they've never used before and just flying a big airplane. It's a big single engine airplane. It weighs almost 7,300 pounds fully loaded. So
much larger than a typical training aircraft that you would fly at a airport or
and so
aviation.
While it's not hard to fly, it is heavier and you just have to get used to that. So we're hoping to, in these 2 weeks, 11 lessons for each of these guys over a 2-week period to get them from, I've never even sat in this airplane or started it to, I feel like I could get in, start it, fly the thing around safely and come back and land it.
So when they get overseas, they've at least had the transition to that aircraft, some sort of foundation.
Yes, and we're using the procedures that the Papua New Guinea pilots use to teach them here. All the same checklists, the same flows, all that stuff is going to be exactly like it will be for them when they get to PNG. So when they sit in the cockpit, they're going to be using the same iPad app, using the same checklists, doing the same cockpit flows. And so hopefully they're going to sit down and at least that will seem familiar to them, even if everything outside the windscreen is unfamiliar.
That's right. They have enough of unfamiliar that it's giving them a few hooks to hang their hat on. And that is one of the beauties of the JAARS Alliance, where when I travel, whether it's Indonesia, Cameroon, I can get in an aircraft and I'll know instantly whether it was a JAARS trained pilot or not. It's really interesting so that's what you're doing here. You're getting them ready.
That's what we're doing. And having those hours in the airplane will help speed up their licensing in country as well.
JAARS doesn't have a Kodiak in our fleet here in the U.S., and so is an incredible partnership with a friend of JAARS that was willing to lease their Kodiak for this month of training. So very generous, and like I said, it takes a village to pull this off, and so we're grateful.
We're very thankful to them for their trust in us to operate their aircraft.
We all know the plane never takes off without a mechanic.
That's right.
But explain a little bit of, you're a pilot mechanic. You probably helped turn wrenches a little bit. But today in the turbine world, turbine aircraft, you fly Kodiaks and Long Rangers, right? Or L3s.
Yeah, right.
So just talk a little bit about what a mechanic meant to you.
Yeah, I am a mechanic and I love working on airplanes, but I was never licensed in Papua New Guinea, so I couldn't sign things off, but I could help. So I often went out and would help with inspections or just random things that they were just short on manpower. But, the main times I can think of maintenance coming to the rescue is when we're out early in the morning. We have a 7:30 departure, so I would show up at 6 o'clock to the office and check the weather and file the flight plan if I hadn't done it the day before, and then start the pre-flight, doing all that stuff. And so in the middle of the pre-flight, you find something wrong, and it's probably 6:30, 6:45 in the morning. And, our maintenance team doesn't come in until 8 typically. And you've got to call them and maybe wake them up, or maybe they're just into their first cup of coffee. But they were always willing to just drop everything and help you help me with whatever was going on. Advice, come out to the hangar early in the middle of their getting ready routine in the morning and try to get the airplane airworthy or properly MEL'd or whatever so that we can get off and get started.
It takes a village, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, your wife carried a lot of responsibilities, I think, with the school, some HR. So
She did.
That's where sometimes we talk only about flying the plane, but there's this whole network of jobs and roles that people play to make those flights possible. One is the mechanic,
Yes.
but also some of the roles your wife served in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was involved with staff care, which is just caring for people's mostly spiritual and emotional needs while they're on the field.
Now, missionaries don't need that.
Yeah, we need it more, probably more than anybody else.
Amen.
And then she worked in HR doing recruiting and interviewing people that wanted to come work in PNG. And then I think the job she liked the most was being principal of the secondary campus of our Ukarumpa International School. And she started that in 2020 and did it for 5 years.
Wow.
And I think she liked that the most. At least that was my observation. And our last 2 years there, I actually I intentionally got out of management roles at my job so that she could have a management role at her job and we could preserve some of our family margin, because both of us being in management roles was our term previous to that, and it was a bit too much for our family.
Yeah. There's no downtime.
And the organization in PNG said, well, we need a principal more than we need you to be in aviation management. I said, okay, well, I'll just be just a pilot and I'll go to work. And when I don't have anything to do, I'll go home and I'll run to the store and get the groceries so that Jamie can keep going at the school. And
that's cool.
So our last 2 years I was still flying, but I wasn't involved in the management decisions, which actually was nice a lot of days. Because it'd be 3 o'clock some days, and I would say, you know what? I don't have anything else to do. I'm going to go home.
I'm going to go home.
I'm going to run to the store before it closes at 4, because there's only one store.
Get dinner on the table.
And start dinner or whatever needed to happen, because she had a faculty meeting that went till 5 that day or whatever. Right. So it was good for me to be able to support her, because she did a ton to support me, especially when I was new to the field, because it's a big, steep learning curve to learn to fly in a place like PNG, and it took 100% of my focus and energy, and my focus was work for first couple of years trying to get through my field checkout, and she kept everybody going in that time, and she deserves a lot of credit for that.
You got an amazing education at LeTourneau. Mm-hmm. You served as an airline regional pilot for several years. You came to JAARS, got technical evaluation and pre-field orientation, flying in the mountains of North Carolina, doing all that. It's like getting your PhD in aviation. But then you get to the field and you're not ready.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, doesn't it? All that work, and then there's still more.
There's still more.
But I half jokingly tell people that come to the field new to learn to fly in PNG is that the only thing that's the same here are the laws of physics. Everything else is different. And like I said, it's only half kidding.
Right.
But, the way the radios work, you have to use an HF radio, which I had never used before I got to PNG, and just learning how to use one of those, learning how to listen and understand on one of those. If you've never used one, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, you can't understand. But
right.
And the weather patterns, flying in really big mountains, how to land on really steep, short runways. We have some good mountain runways here in North Carolina, but nothing like PNG. Right. And making that transition
takes
takes
the whistle.
time. Yeah, that's right. And it's just a lot to learn, just operationally to be able to safely make the decisions you need to make to do flights in PNG. And so it took me about 2 years to get through my whole checkout, about 6 to 8 months to get to your first solo flight.
Okay.
Is what, if you can devote full time to it and there's enough trainers on staff at the time to get you the flights you need. And there's a lot of factors that go into it.
We have a generation that likes to taste and see. They like to explore opportunities and options. And, we're putting a lot of energy into vision trips. So somebody can go for a few weeks and personally engage in something that they can put on their story, their social media story.
Yeah.
But this sounds like a lifelong commitment just to go. A decade for you, actually more than a decade of just preparation.
Yep. Yeah. And it's really neat to look back now and see, oh, look at God guiding us along the way.
Yeah.
You know, even those 12 years between college when God's like, go do missions, and like 12 years later, we thought, well, maybe we just heard him wrong and
Right.
this is something we'll do in retirement, you know. But then nope. One day when the time was right, he was like, go now. We're like, really? Now? Like, we're just getting comfortable here, God. But that's the way God works, isn't it? He doesn't want us to be comfortable. He wants us to depend on him.
So there's probably somebody listening that is 5, 8, 10 years into a career. What would be your message for them?
Well, I've said this before, is that if God's asking you to go, just say yes. And that's easy to say and hard to do. And I've done both. I've said yes and I did it. But it's not without its challenges. And even today, it's still a faith journey. The whole thing is a faith journey. You know, I'm back in my home country, but I don't have a home here anymore, which is kind of weird. It's weird to be in your home country and not have a home.
Whole podcast on that.
Yeah.
You're home, but you're not.
Yeah. So, I mean, my family lives in an area in Texas, so that's still kind of home to me because that was our family's home base for 8 years before we left to go do missions. So but it's not home to my kids. I don't think it'll ever be home to my children because they grew up.
Almost like it's Uncharted to your kids.
Yes, it is. And our future here in my home country is uncharted. I don't know. If we decide to come serve at JAARS, I'm not from North Carolina. I have no family here. I've never lived here full time other than JAARS training. And so it'd be starting over for us. We got to make friends and find a church to get plugged into. And our youngest still has 3 years of high school. We got to figure out how is she going to get that done and what are her needs. And there's just a lot of things to consider. And it's a little overwhelming to think about it. But again, God's been faithful. He will be faithful. And
Amen.
We just have to take the next step and wait for him to provide and reveal what's next.
Jason, I just thank you so much for your willingness to come and share a little window into your family and your journey. Basically, in summary, it's not about a destination. It's a journey that God's taking you on. Mm-hmm. And even returning to your home country can feel uncharted. And so it's a step of faith, even to come back, probably maybe even more difficult than a step of faith to go.
Yeah, I think that's true because to go back to PNG would have been the easy thing because that's where our home was. That's where we knew. It's familiar.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think of a foreign country as being more familiar than your home country, but it becomes that way over a period of time.
Well, thank you for your faithfulness. And thank you for listening to God's call. And thank you for being open and available for what God has next for you.
Thanks for listening to the Uncharted podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, review, and share. Check back soon for more episodes.